What happens when a nation turns its coastline into an impenetrable fortress? And your only answer is a weapon that refuses to play by the old rules. And what changes when that weapon strikes faster than the people inside can even lock the doors? If you want to cut through the noise and understand how modern conflicts actually shift, tap like, subscribe for weekly breakdowns, and send this to one person who prefers facts over fear. For generations, military planners operated under a quiet assumption. If you cannot see a target, you cannot destroy it. This belief shaped how nations protected their most critical assets. Instead of leaving sensitive equipment exposed on open ground, engineers began digging. They carved storage bays into hillsides. They reinforced tunnel entrances with steel and thick concrete. They built entire networks beneath the soil, counting on the fact that ordinary explosives simply would not reach them. A standard bomb strikes the surface and releases its energy outward. The shockwave travels through the air, cracks the pavement, and fades. Below, shielded by dozens of feet of solid rock, the machinery stays untouched. Depth became the ultimate insurance policy. It was inexpensive to construct, difficult to locate, and nearly impossible to neutralize with conventional tools. Iran leaned into this approach for decades. Rather than keeping missiles, command centers, and production lines visible to aerial surveillance, planners moved them underground. Storage facilities were pushed beneath mountain slopes. Launch systems were shielded by natural terrain. The objective was never to win a direct confrontation. The objective was to survive one, to keep enough capability hidden that even a sustained aerial campaign could not erase the threat. For a long time, the math worked perfectly. Reconnaissance teams would track surface activity. Aircraft would drop munitions on suspected entrances. Craters would form. Dust would settle. But days later, vehicles would emerge from secondary tunnels. Equipment would be moved through hidden routes. The mountain kept its secrets. That belief in underground safety shaped entire defense doctrines. It influenced how countries positioned their assets, how they budgeted for protection, and how they calculated risk. The ground itself was treated as an ally. But every defensive advantage eventually breeds a countermeasure. When one side relies on concealment, the other side invests in detection. And when the hiding spots become the primary target, engineers start building tools designed to ignore the surface entirely. The limitation of traditional air power created a strategic blind spot. Lighter munitions bounced off reinforced stone. Heavier systems required massive transport aircraft and long deployment cycles. There was a middle ground that went untouched for years, a space where speed, precision, and penetration could finally meet. That space is what modern penetrators were built to fill. The weapon does not rely on overwhelming size. It relies on surgical focus. Designed as a 5,000-pound precision penetrator, it bridges the divide between tactical strike weapons and enormous massive ordnance systems. But weight is only part of the equation. The real breakthrough lies in accessibility. Older penetrator designs required extensive planning. Commanders had to coordinate distant bombers, wait for favorable weather, and accept delays that gave adversaries time to react. This system changes that timeline completely. It can be mounted on fighter jets already positioned in forward operating bases. Aircraft designed for heavy payloads can carry it without extensive modifications. That means when intelligence confirms a high-value target, the response window shrinks from days to hours. A strike can be planned, approved, and executed while the facility is still active. The psychological impact of that speed cannot be overstated. An enemy that assumes it has weeks to relocate equipment suddenly faces threats that arrive within the same daylight cycle. The weapon also carries a guidance package built for real combat conditions. It relies on satellite navigation and inertial systems, allowing crews to program exact coordinates before leaving the ground. The bomb flies itself toward the target, correcting for wind, turbulence, and atmospheric shifts. If visual conditions deteriorate, the system does not panic. It locks on to the last verified data and continues straight to the impact point. For missions requiring extreme accuracy, operators can pair it with laser designation. The aircraft paints the entry zone and the weapon adjusts its trajectory in real time. If smoke, cloud cover, or defensive maneuvers break the laser link, the bomb seamlessly returns to its programmed coordinates. This redundancy is not a minor upgrade. It is the difference between a tool that performs on a quiet test range and one that survives under active resistance. Every component exists for a single purpose: to deliver force exactly where it matters, not where it is convenient. Understanding how a bunker penetrator works requires looking past the explosion itself. The destruction happens before you even see the fire. A conventional bomb is designed to rupture immediately upon impact. Its casing is thin enough to fragment quickly, spreading shockwaves across a wide area. That approach fails completely against buried targets. The new generation flips that logic entirely. Its outer shell is forged from high-grade hardened steel. When it strikes solid ground, it does not break. It drives forward. The kinetic energy of the fall, combined with the massive weight, acts like a heavy piston. It fractures soil, cracks bedrock, and pushes downward. Inside that reinforced casing sits a specialized fuse system. This is not a simple timer. It is an intelligent sensor that monitors depth, resistance, and structural changes as the weapon travels through the earth. It waits for the exact moment the casing breaches the outer rock layer and enters the target zone. Only then does it trigger. The detonation happens inside the confined space of the tunnel or storage bay. That trapped energy has nowhere to escape. It compresses the surrounding stone, collapses support pillars, shatters ventilation shafts, and ruins the delicate equipment stored within. The fire you sometimes see rolling out of a hillside is not just an explosion. It is pressurized air forcing its way through fractured rock. It is the mountain itself failing under internal stress. This kind of precision requires flawless coordination between physics and electronics. The guidance system must keep the weapon on a perfect vertical trajectory. The casing must withstand extreme G-forces without warping. The fuse must ignore false triggers from surface debris while remaining sensitive enough to detect the target environment. Every generation of penetrator weapons has pushed these boundaries further. The original Earth penetrators from the early 90s relied on basic laser tracking and thinner steel casings. They worked, but they had limitations. Modern variants use advanced metallurgy, multi-stage fuse, technology, and hybrid navigation packages. They are engineered to survive impacts that would destroy ordinary munitions instantly. The result is a weapon that does not just hit a target, it enters it. It travels to the heart of the structure and releases its force where it causes maximum disruption. That shift in design philosophy changes how campaigns are planned. Commanders no longer need to saturate an area with dozens of lighter bombs. One precisely aimed penetrator, dropped from the correct altitude, can achieve what used to require an entire flight group. The efficiency reduces risk for the aircraft, minimizes collateral exposure, and allows strikes to focus on critical nodes instead of wasting resources on surface structures that serve no strategic purpose. The engineering behind the system is impressive, but the real transformation lies in how it changes the pace of military operations. Speed is the new currency of modern warfare. In past conflicts, reconnaissance, intelligence processing, political approval, and weapon deployment often took days or weeks. That delay was a feature of the system. It forced Commander S to be patient. It gave adversaries time to adapt, relocate assets, or simply fire what they had before a response arrived. The current generation of penetrators removes that buffer. With aircraft already forward deployed, the chain of command can move from detection to strike in a single shift. If a satellite identifies heat signatures inside a tunnel network, or signals intelligence confirms missile movement near a hardened site, the response does not wait for a global deployment cycle. The weapon is loaded, the flight plan is adjusted, and the mission launches. This compression of time fundamentally breaks defensive models built around patience. Those models assume that even if a location is discovered, the counterstrike will arrive too late to matter. That assumption no longer holds. The weapon also changes how commanders prioritize targets. Instead of launching broad campaigns to suppress an entire region, strikey teams can focus on high-value nodes. A single underground storage facility, a command bunker, or a production line can be neutralized with surgical precision. This approach reduces the need for large formations, minimizes exposure to advanced air defenses, and allows operations to run continuously without exhausting personnel or equipment. The psychological pressure on the ground intensifies. When a defense strategy relies on the belief that depth equals safety, every successful strike chips away at that confidence. It is not just about destroying hardware. It is about proving that the mountain no longer offers protection. Once that belief cracks, the entire defensive posture begins to shift. Units become cautious. Movement slows. Decision-makers start questioning whether their hidden assets are truly secure or simply waiting to be found. This is how modern campaigns erode an adversary position, not through overwhelming force alone, but through steady, precise pressure that targets the foundation of their strategy. The longer the strikes continue, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion of an untouchable arsenal. Replacement efforts require moving heavy equipment to exposed sites, increasing visibility, and risking further attacks. There is no quick fix. The mathematics of attrition starts working against the defender. Every tunnel that falls reduces the leverage that once felt permanent. That leverage is what keeps diplomatic pressure at bay. When it disappears, negotiations change shape. If you're tracking how technology reshapes modern conflict, take a moment to subscribe. I break down the actual mechanics behind the headlines, not the recycled sound bites. Drop us a comment below telling me which defensive strategy you think will evolve next, and I will feature the best insights in the next video. There is another layer to this story that rarely makes the evening news. The contest is not just fought in the air or underground. It is fought in the digital spectrum. Satellite networks orbit the globe, capturing thermal images, tracking structural shifts, and monitoring electromagnetic emissions. Intelligence analysts piece together fragments of data to build a living map of hidden facilities. But defense planners are not sitting idle. They know exactly how targeting teams work. They understand that heat signatures, ground movement, and radio traffic give away positions. So they build decoys. They construct fake ventilation shafts. They route dummy power lines to empty tunnels. They schedule rehearsals that mimic real operations. The goal is to waste expensive precision weapons on hollow targets. This means the strike package is only as effective as the intelligence behind it. A 5,000-pound penetrator will deliver its payload exactly where it is told. But if the coordinates are wrong, the entire mission becomes a costly exercise in futility. Both sides are locked in a quiet, relentless contest over sensors, data verification, and signal interception. The offense needs absolute certainty. The defense relies on plausible deniability. This dynamic shapes every headline we see. When officials announce a successful strike, it usually means the intelligence was verified through multiple independent sources. When results are described as inconclusive, it often means the target was better camouflaged than expected, or the weapon hit a secondary structure. The public rarely sees the months of cross-referencing, the debates in war rooms, or the quiet frustration when a high-value site turns out to be empty. But that behind-the-scenes struggle is just as critical as weapon itself. It is the invisible battlefield that determines whether technology actually changes the course of a conflict. This intelligence war directly impacts the political landscape. When underground networks fall, the leadership structure above ground begins to strain. Decision makers face impossible choices. Do they relocate surviving assets to safer locations, risking exposure during transit? Do they accelerate production schedules, accepting lower quality to meet urgent deadlines? Do they push for immediate diplomatic concessions to stop the strikes? Or do they double down on defiance to maintain domestic support? There is no clean answer. Each option carries severe consequences. We have already seen this pattern play out in recent negotiations. High-level agreements were drafted with optimism. Signatures were exchanged. Media outlets celebrated the breakthrough. But within weeks, the fragile trust unraveled. Minor incidents at sea triggered major reactions. Both sides blamed the other for breaking the terms. The diplomatic track stalled. Strikes resumed. This cycle is not a sign of failed planning. It is a symptom of competing priorities. Military commanders want to preserve combat capability. Economic advisors want relief from sanctions. Hardliners demand uncompromising resistance. Foreign diplomats seek stability. When these groups pull in different directions, the government speaks with multiple voices. That fragmentation is visible to anyone paying attention. It shows up in contradictory statements, delayed policy announcements, and sudden shifts in rhetoric. When a nation cannot present a unified front, it is usually because the pressure has become too great to manage behind closed doors. The strikes on coastal hideouts are not just destroying concrete and steel. They are forcing internal debates into the open. They are testing whether a government can hold together when its traditional shields are cracking. History shows that regimes rarely collapse from external force alone. They fracture when the leadership can no longer agree on how to respond to that force. The current situation is following that exact trajectory. The economic and human consequences of this new warfare model extend far beyond military balance sheets. When coastal hideouts are targeted, the immediate goal is to neutralize missile batteries and command centers. But the ripple effects touch global supply chains, energy markets, and civilian livelihoods. Shipping routes that once operated freely now face calculated risks. Insurance premiums for maritime transport skyrocket. Fuel prices adjust to reflect the uncertainty. Ordinary consumers feel the impact at the pump and in their grocery bills. Meanwhile, military personnel on both sides face unprecedented stress. Pilots know that precision strikes carry fewer collateral risks, but they also know that the margin for error is razor thin. Ground troops operating near targeted zones deal with constant uncertainty, knowing that the ground beneath them can suddenly fail. Families in coastal communities live with the anxiety of proximity to high-value targets, even if they are not directly involved in the conflict. This is the reality of modern strategic competition. It is not fought in isolated battlefields with clear front lines. It is woven into the fabric of daily life, affecting trade, travel, and economic stability across continents. The technology that enables faster, more precise strikes also accelerates the pace of decision-making. Commands that once required weeks of debate now happen in hours. That speed increases efficiency, but it also raises the risk of miscalculation. A misread signal, a delayed intelligence update, or communication breakdown can trigger unintended escalations. Commanders and diplomats alike operate in an environment where seconds matter, and mistakes are magnified. This is why the development of these weapons is not just a military achievement. It is a test of institutional discipline, strategic patience, and crisis management. The side that can maintain clarity under pressure will outlast the side that reacts impulsively. The conflict is not won by the biggest explosion, it is won by T, He ability to sustain a coherent strategy while absorbing shocks, adapting to new threats, and keeping civilian populations engaged in the broader objective. That requires more than advanced engineering. It requires leadership that understands the difference between tactical victory and strategic success. If this breakdown is helping you connect the dots between weapons design and global strategy, share this video with someone who only sees the surface level coverage. Context like this is exactly what turns noise into understanding, and your share helps more people find the full picture. Looking past the immediate conflict, this entire scenario reveals a broader trend in modern warfare. The era of relying on static defenses is ending. Walls, bunkers, and hidden facilities once provided long-term security. Today, they provide temporary cover. Advanced sensors can detect heat signatures, ground movement, and structural changes from space. Artificial intelligence processes that data continuously, flagging anomalies that human analysts might miss. Precision munitions are designed to exploit those exact weak points. The cycle is relentless. Defensive architects dig deeper. Offensive engineers build stronger penetrators. The gap narrows with each generation. This does not mean underground facilities are useless. They still provide valuable protection against conventional threats. They still complicate targeting and buy time, but they no longer offer immunity. The assumption that depth equals safety has been replaced by the reality that depth only delays exposure. Nations watching this conflict are already adjusting their plans. Some will disperse their assets across multiple smaller sites to reduce the impact of any single strike. Others will invest in mobile launch systems that can relocate before targeting data reaches the drop zone. A few will double down on concealment, using decoys, camouflage, and layered terrain masking to confuse satellite imagery. Each adaptation will be met with a corresponding technological response. This is the nature of strategic competition. It does not end with a single victory. It evolves through continuous adaptation. The current generation of weapons is simply the latest manifestation of that evolution. It represents a shift from brute force to surgical precision, from saturation bombing to targeted erosion, from hoping a target stays hidden to knowing exactly how to find it and reach it. This shift changes how wars are planned, funded, and executed. It favors nations with advanced sensor networks, rapid decision-making cycles, and precision munitions supply chains. It disadvantages those relying on legacy infrastructure and static defense models. The human element remains the most critical variable. Technology can destroy a tunnel, but it cannot replace the political will, economic stability, and social cohesion that keep a strategy alive. When those foundations weaken, even the strongest bunker becomes irrelevant. The real question is no longer whether a weapon can penetrate rock. It is whether a nation can sustain the cost of constantly rebuilding what gets destroyed. That calculation drives every diplomatic move, every military deployment, and every public statement. It determines when pressure turns into surrender and when defiance turns into escalation. Understanding that dynamic is essential to seeing where this conflict is actually heading. The mathematics of modern warfare is no longer about who has the most weapons. It is about who can process information faster, strike more precisely, and endure longer without collapsing under the weight of their own expenditures. Every tunnel that falls brings that mathematical reality closer to the surface. History offers clear parallels to what we are witnessing today. In earlier conflicts, nations built massive surface fortifications, believing that steel and concrete would withstand artillery and aerial bombardment. Coastal artillery batteries, fortified cities, and trench networks were all designed to stop advancing forces. Yet, time and again, those static defenses were bypassed, outflanked, or rendered obsolete by new technology. The lesson was never that fortifications were useless. The lesson was that defense musain't evolve as fast as offense. When one side relies on a single method of protection, the other side simply finds a way around it. Underground networks were the next logical step. They solved the visibility problem. They survived conventional bombing. They provided shelter, storage, and operational continuity. But they carried the same fundamental flaw. They assumed that concealment equals invulnerability. That assumption worked until engineering caught up. Now we are watching the same cycle repeat. The underground era is reaching its limits. The next phase will likely emphasize mobility, dispersion, and deception. Forces will need to move constantly, hide in plain sight, and operate in decentralized networks that cannot be neutralized by a single strike. This shift will require massive investments in logistics, communication, and training. It will also change how alliances are formed and how deterrence is calculated. Nations will no longer measure strength by the size of their bunkers. They will measure it by the speed of their response, the resilience of their supply chains, and the agility of their command structures. The transition will be costly, it will be uncomfortable, but it is unavoidable. The tools available today have rewritten the rules of engagement. Those who ignore that reality will find themselves fighting yesterday's war with tomorrow's problems. So where does this actually leave us? We are watching a historical inflection point. The mountain hideouts that once guaranteed survival are now just another coordinate on a targeting map. The weapons that fall from the sky do not just carry explosive force. They carry a message about how modern conflict operates. Speed matters. Precision matters. Information matters more than mass. The side that controls the data stream compresses the decision cycle and delivers surgical force will dictate the pace of the engagement. That does not mean traditional military power is obsolete. It means it has evolved. The human element remains central. Strategy still requires vision, discipline, and the courage to make difficult choices under uncertainty. Diplomacy still holds the power to de-escalate tensions, but it must be backed by credible capability and realistic expectations. The conflict will not end with a single strike or a dramatic surrender. It will conclude when both sides recognize that the cost of continuation exceeds the value of their demands. That moment will arrive not because of a new weapon, but because of exhausted resources, fractured leadership, and the sheer weight of sustained pressure. Until then, the cycle continues. Strikes fall, facilities collapse, negotiations stall, markets adjust, leaders speak, and the world watches as old doctrines crumble and new ones take shape. The new generation of penetrators did not start this war. They will not end it alone, but they have permanently altered the landscape. They have proven that concealment is temporary. They have shown that time is no longer a shield. They have forced every military planner, diplomat, and analyst to rethink what protection actually means in the 21st century. Nothing stays hidden forever. The earth can be penetrated. The silence can be broken. The illusion of safety can be shattered. What remains is the choice to adapt, to negotiate, or to persist until the cost becomes unsustainable. That choice will define the next chapter of global security. I want to hear where you think this actually goes from here. Do you believe nations will adapt their defense strategies quickly? Or will they continue relying on outdated methods until forced to change? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single response, and your perspective helps shape the conversations we explore next. If this perspective helped you see past the noise and understand the mechanics behind the headlines, share it with someone who values clarity over confusion. Keep asking the harder questions. Keep looking for the full picture. I will see you in the next breakdown.